No matter your age, your plan for retirement can start today. From the News Channel 5 Network, this is the Retirement Report.
Good morning. Welcome to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. We're talking today, we're going to get into, there's so much stuff in the news about some negative things out there, Wells Fargo being one, some of the things that are going on in the economy, of course. Deutsche Bank is another one that we're seeing some negative things on in the news. So what we're going to be talking about is how do these things impact you? What do they mean for as far as your future? And this is something where one of the key parts to that future is time. You know, it's one of those resources we don't talk about too much, but understanding how time can work both for you and against you is so critical. You know, when you stop and think about it, you're going to spend maybe, if you started saving like, you know, hopefully early, let's say, 30 to 40 years maybe saving for retirement. And then guess what? And then you're looking at maybe 20 to 30 years in retirement. So see how now time is going to maybe be your friend. Is earlier you start saving, it can definitely be your friend because of the compounding and the way that your money can grow. All right, the longer you wait to start saving for retirement, of course, the more you're going to have to be able to put away and the more difficult it's going to be. So understanding the value of time is so important. The next part is when you retire. Looking at 20 to 30 years in retirement. So what are some of the things we're going to be concerned about? Running out of money, of course, might be one of those, right? How long might we live? How long might my money have to last? And what kind of things are life going to bring my way, health-wise, or other things that could increase my expenses over what they are just to maintain your standard of living and quality of life? So these are the kind of questions that we ask. And this is the other part of it. You know, we have this tendency to say someday, right? You know, someday I'm going to get to do this, or someday I'm going to get to do that, or, you know, I'm going to start saving for retirement someday, or I'm going to start reducing those expenses someday, or I'm going to go get that special vacation I want. I'm going to take that trip to Europe. I'm going to do whatever it is on your someday list. Let's not let life pass us by and never get to those somedays. Okay, let's start today. All right, so when it comes to understanding time, it's knowing how to use time to your advantage, how to get the most of it. This is how to invest, in other words, to maximize your return on investment, how to minimize taxes, right? It's not just what you make, it's what you get to keep. So if there's a way you can be more tax efficient in your investing and reduce your taxes, that's more money that stays in your account. Another one is staying ahead of inflation, protecting the purchasing power of your dollars. You know, this is one of those areas that can so easily happen and I'll give you an example. None of us have a crystal ball. No one knows what's going to happen over the next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. So we don't know what the markets are going to do. We've got some predictors out there. We've got some things that are going to, you know, maybe give us some guidance, and I'll talk about those. But when we're looking forward and trying to figure that out, it's very difficult to do. And this is where inflation is one of those. Is it going to be low? Is it going to be high? All right, so let's say we just look at somewhere in between. Right now we've got inflation below 2%. If we look over the last 40 years, it's averaged over 4%. So let's kind of go in the middle at 3. Okay, we'll say at 3% inflation. Now imagine, had you invested, or had you retired rather, at the beginning of 2000. We went through a bear market period at that point. From 2000 through 2009, that's referred to as the lost decade. It's one of the worst 10-year periods in the history of the stock market. In that period of time, we talk about, for instance, what are known as 10-year rolling averages. And what that means is basically, if you stay invested in the stock market for at least 10 years, you've got like a 95% chance of success, that is, making money in that situation. And the more diversified and the better put together your portfolio is, okay, utilizing academic principles that are available to us today, proven strategies, then you can put those odds even more in your favor. But let's look again. You retired at the beginning of 2000, and let's say you had $500,000 that you had saved up, and you're going to take 5% a year out of that, and you're going to consistently take that $25,000 a year, let's say, and we're going to adjust that up for inflation. After 10 years' time, 10 years in retirement, you would have less than half your money left. Okay, not a good way to start retirement. I mean, oh my goodness, now what's the risk of running out of money? It's so much higher, isn't it? And then what happens if any kind of health issues or things that could increase your expenses happen? Oh my goodness, right? It gets even worse. Now, if you adjust that for inflation, not only is it less than half, but in reality, it's less than 200,000 of what you originally started, of that 500,000 that you started with. So this is the effect of inflation over that period as well. So it's basically, you put those two together, and you'd probably well less than 200,000, 150 to 200 maybe. So this is one of the things. There was another study done by Nationwide, and they took a look at it from a different standpoint. They said, what if you retired in 1973, as an example, and what would happen in the same concept? Okay, you had $100,000 in their scenario, and you invested that money in this S&P 500 index, which outperforms. The S&P, of course, is the 500 largest companies in the United States. They make up 70% of the equity in the stock market. So, and in fact, outperforms something like 80 to 90% of equity mutual funds. So the S&P as an investment vehicle is usually going to be better than most any other equity mutual fund you're going to select, or even grouping of funds such as stock mutual funds is what I'm talking about. So what had happened? 1973, what would have happened? You would have run out of money within 20 years. You'd have been broke. Now here's the interesting thing. That's if you retired in 1973. What happens if you retired in 1974? You'd have run out of money even faster in 16 years. Okay? What happens if you retired in 1975, 1 year later? So follow me on this, right? 1973, I run out of money in 20 years if I retired then. 1974, I would have run out of money in 16 years. Okay? What happens if I retired in 1975? I would have tripled my money. Not only would I have been able to take 4% a year consistently from my portfolio and adjusted that money up for inflation, but I would have had 3 times as much money in 20 years if I'd have retired in 1975. Now, do we know if it's going to be 73, 74, or 75? We don't. We don't know what the conditions are when we retire, so we have to have strategies that protect us no matter what life's going to throw at us. So this is going to start today. I'm going to show you some strategies, share with you some strategies, and we're going to start from some basics. One of those is I want to explain something that I'm asked, and this is the importance. What does a fiduciary mean? Okay, what is a fiduciary? And I found this great graph from Ed Slott's website, and I really like this one. What makes a fiduciary? And one is the desire to act in your client's best interest. In fact, that's a legal requirement that as a fiduciary, I have to act in the best interest, put my client's interest ahead of all others, including my own. That's the legal standard. Okay? Now, the Department of Labor has a fiduciary rule they're putting forth, as you know, that's going to go into effect next year. It's being challenged right now in the courts, so we'll see what happens. But right now it has been passed in law, and it is going to go into effect next year. Now, one of the things they said when they issued the Department of Labor issued its fiduciary rule, they also issued what's known as the best interest contract exemption, another I think it was 200-page document. In that document, it said this is not a search, and we're speaking of fiduciaries, this is not a search for subjective good faith. A pure heart and an empty head are not enough. In other words, you're actually knowing what's in your client's best interest is the next part. Those two combined are what make a fiduciary. Now, this is real important when it comes to this. We can get rid of that slide. I want you to understand what's a fiduciary part. Understanding that what we do with comprehensive financial planning, if I go see someone, if you've got an advisor and they're just advising you on investments, that's fine, but that's not really going to be able to meet that fiduciary standard without knowing a lot more, doing a comprehensive financial plan in my estimation. And I think to meet that standard that's being set by the Department of Labor, one of the things you have to look at is how would I be able to advise you, in other words, how to invest, if I don't know what your income and expenses, what your assets and liabilities, what your financial goals are going to be, when you're going to retire, what you're going to have for money in retirement. All these different things have to be known, all right, before, and each individual is going to be different. The pieces may be the same, but they're going to look different, and the goals of the individual are going to be different, or of that family, of that couple. All right, so when someone comes in and says, hey, what should I do with this money? Well, let's sit down and first see what that money is going to be needed for. If that's money that you're going to need for income in the next 5 years or 10 years, then the advice for that in terms of how to invest is going to be totally different than if it's money that say is going to be able to be left alone for 10, 15, or 20 years. So as you can see, and you don't know that unless you sit down and you do up a plan, because most people don't know that themselves. One of the things we're going to do, and we do this each and every week, we're going to offer up for the first 10 callers to my office, 615-376-5325, a free packet. Now what we're going to send out is a financial, it's basically a little checklist of things to bring if you want to come in and see me. In addition, I'm going to send you a copy of my book, 7 Steps to Financial Freedom in Retirement. So with that, what we're doing is offering up a comprehensive plan. Okay, so we can get rid of that one again. So a comprehensive plan, simply this, right? First 10 callers, 615-376-5325, you'll get a comprehensive plan, not just a free consultation. You'll be able to come in, sit down with me, and I will be able to work with you and show you what your financial future is going to be. Based on what you're doing today, I'll show you, here's your plan. Okay, whether it was intentional or not, this is your plan. This is what you have. This is what your future is going to be if you keep doing the things you're doing. And if that's a good future and it's going to meet all your goals, then great, you're ready to go. And then I'm going to show you also, though, some other ways, some strategies that maybe can improve that future. All right, that's part of the planning, is showing you all the alternatives out there, which is what I try to bring to you, of course, each and every week as well. One of the things that starts with is understanding how our world is today compared to what it was before. All right, things have changed. So when we look at, when I have clients come in today, fewer and fewer people have pensions. And in fact, I think the statistic is only 18% of people working today will have a pension when they retire. That changes how we view retirement, doesn't it? That's one less piece that used to be there that's no longer there. But I'm going to show you a way that you can, in fact, fill in that gap and still be fine and never have to worry as far as income and retirement. How to make sure you are able to attain and maintain your standard of living and quality of life no matter how long you live. That's what good planning is about, and we're going to be talking about that today. So join us here. We'll be right back on the Retirement Report.